Today, I'm going to walk you through this giant transformation. We have years of black box dye layered on top of each other, and what we got to today was a beautiful sandy level 8 blonde, so stick around. If this is your first time here, welcome in. This is Bobby Hair Studio. Welcome to Bobby's crew. I'm Katie, the head stylist at Bobby Hair Studio, and I do specialize in blonding and a lot of color corrections. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure you do so if you want to see more free tutorials, because I include everything in them. I include all of my formulas and methods and tips and tricks. And as a lot of people in the comments will probably tell you, this does help a lot of the hairdressing community. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Let's get started. Today's client hair history is she has years of Sally's hair dye in a demi-permanent, I can't remember which brand it was, maybe it was Wella, maybe it was Ion, one of the two. She does it regularly and she starts from the front, you'll see that later. She's had no lightening services. So her hair is really healthy, but there's layers of this really tough color to get out. So what we're gonna do is we are going to start with a cut. And I know we're cutting off most of the black. We really are, that's fine. But there's still quite a bit of black in her hair, which we are going to be dealing with today. So that's why I still made this into a tutorial. And my client had originally wanted to do long hair, but over the month that she was waiting for her appointment, she had decided she wanted to do a French bob. So it wasn't my choice for the cut, it was hers, but I am so glad because this appointment took like 10 hours anyways. So even with short hair, it took a long time. Look at the amount of hair that we cut off. This girl has a ton of hair, and that's my size 10 shoe right next to it. I got big feet, that's a lot of hair. Now this is not an ad, but I am using K18's Pro Chelator Complex, and that's because it neutralizes things like heavy metals and chemicals, which tend to be in black box dye. So if you're ever doing any kind of box dye corrective service, I would definitely recommend getting some kind of metal detoxifier because it's going to help neutralize those harmful chemicals which could mess up your whole lightening service. And then I'm overlapping onto that with K18 mist so we can protect our hair while we lift it, because we're going to have to lift this twice. And even though the test strand showed it was going to be okay during the first lift, I'm like, we're still going to protect the hair as much as possible. Now what I'm using first is this color remover by Schwarzkopf. It's their bond enforcing color remover, and this is a bleach based color remover. There's two types of color removers that I know of, at least in the world, and they are like ammonia free ones and then ones that are bleach based. This one is bleach based, it has bond builders in it, so that as well as the K18, it's just going to keep your hair as healthy as possible while we do this. The way I'm applying this is because it is a lightener based formula, is I'm trying to apply it just kind of to the area where there's like the black box dye. However, she is a level 6, so it can be hard to tell because when black box dye fades, it still is dark, might not be pure black at the area that you just started at. So I am moving it a little bit higher than where I see the black box dye, just in case there is some residual color that I maybe haven't seen. And at least this will provide me with a clear image of where the box dye sits and where it doesn't sit. So I'm applying this on and I'm trying to saturate it as much as possible, massage it through the hair. And these ones typically sit on for about 20 minutes. This is a little bit different than like a color oops that you'd find at Sally's. A color oops, I'm pretty sure, is one of those not like those ammonia free ones. The way that you can tell is if it smells like rotting garbage. If it smells like rotting garbage, it's going to be one of those ones that I think that they kind of change the molecular structure of color in the hair and cause it to come out. But it can be kind of difficult to use, but they are really helpful. I like both color movers. I'm just using this one today because I feel like this one was going to help me more in this service. So I am covering her with a plastic bag, not her face, just her hair. And I am using a little bit of heat to make sure that this stays warm and can do as much as possible in one sitting. Now that it's done processing, I'm just checking in, and you can see that there's some lift on her natural hair. And even though that seems like a bad thing, it gives me a clear marker of where any of this black box dye is, because that's going to be lifted twice today. So now we're ready to wash her out. And the key thing to remember when you're washing out a color remover is to scrub downwards, because if there's color molecules that you're pulling out of the hair, you literally want to squeegee them out. So I am using the hottest water that my client can handle. I'm using a detoxing shampoo, and I am scrubbing that hair and squeegeeing it down to pull out any of those big color molecules that have been loosened up during the color remover. And I'm going to show you in a second why when people say just use a color remover, why that's honestly BS, because color remover doesn't always remove color, even though that's in the name. Bleach is more powerful. Color remover can work, it just really depends on what's in your hair. So this is after our color remover. You can see that it's lifted a little bit of her natural, but those ends are still black as night. They are so dark. Color remover will not get rid of all colors. It will get rid of the weaker ones for sure. I've used it in my hair, I've used it in so many clients' hair, but you can't just rely on color remover to set your hair back to a natural. That's not its job, that's not what it does. The reason why I started with one today is so that hopefully it loosens up those color molecules and it will help to encourage at least some of that really hard black to come out before I start lightening the hair. And maybe it will assist in my lightening process so that I can hopefully lift past a level 7. So let's move on to what I'm doing now. This is the first lightening session. And this is the biggest, most important one. My lightener formula today is Blonde Me with 20 volume. Anyone who's a regular will know that this is my standard lightener. I am using this, and it's just because I really want like a really good lift. I know that this box dye is going to be really, really tough to lift out. But what I'm essentially doing with this first lightening round is this is the one that takes 3 to 4 hours to apply. Honestly, it took forever. I am taking my hair and sectioning it into 5 sections. I've got the mohawk, I've got the 2 sides, and I've got the 2 backs. What I'm doing with each piece is I'm taking out like maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch section, and I'm weaving, and I take that top half of the weave and I pin it up and away. The bottom half is going to be treated like a hand-painted balayage piece. So I'm making sure that I cover over all of the box dye and all of that little red band area. And then from there on, it's just kind of up to me how far I want to blend upwards. That's going to give me that soft rooted appeal versus doing just everything as a standard platinum card and giving a really hard root. We're not trying to get her platinum blonde. We're just trying to get rid of the black so she can grow out as soft as possible. So this is a really good way to apply a really soft root, because then I bring down that little weaved piece and I make that a standard highlight right up to as far as I can go. And what that does is it creates like 1 inch to 1.5 inches of soft blended highlight roots, and then the ends will have this like solid blonde appeal, because we can't just do weaves and drops with this, because whatever's dropped is going to be black and orange. It's going to be awful. So we do have to bleach this whole head, and this is a really good alternative to doing a standard platinum card where you just do slices and all the way up to the top. This allows for a really, really soft grow out. It's lower maintenance, but it takes so much longer to apply because you're still trying to get a blend in there no matter what. So that's the pattern that I was doing all over the head, where I take one section and I cut the top half as a weave, the bottom half is a hand-painted foil. What I'm doing with the 2 sides is I am starting with just 2 standard baby slices so that we can have a really soft, like tiny money piece in the very front. We do want that blonde going right up to the top there. It's going to have a really soft root looking kind of stuff anyways, because we are going to be doing a shadow root, but this is just something like I like to do on every single foil client, is just do a couple of tiny slices. It gives a little pop of blonde. And then I'll be going back to that standard foiling practice that you saw on the back, and that's going to be done on the sides and the top. What I recommend for anybody doing a 3-hour foiling service where you're just foiling for the 3 hours is having a very simplified foiling pattern like that. You just take a piece, cut it in half, and do the bottom half and the top half the same way you do it all over the head. It's going to create a really symmetrical look everywhere. It's going to keep it simplified for you when you start getting burnt out. When you're on like the 4th section, you're like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. I'm so exhausted. It takes the brain work out of it essentially, because color corrections are things where you're constantly thinking about the next step, and this fully lets your brain just kind of be open to your other thoughts and your conversations with your clients. Whatever's going on in your head, you're not having to think about what foil you just did and what foil you're doing next, because the little weave is just pinned right up in front of you, so you know what you're doing right now. And then once you pull down that weave, you know you're doing the next section next. So This is the sides and the back. The top hasn't even been started, but the back is ready to get washed out. So we're gonna wash that out. We're using shampoo as well so that we don't get any foil bleeds. And this is the result of the back being lifted to its full capacity. Those ends are still brown as heck. Those are so dark. That's like a level 5, 6 lift. Like that color is not budging. Look at how dark that is. If you had to tone over that, you'd be using level 5. But like, look at how soft those roots are. So you can tell already how soft that rootage is gonna be. And here I'm pulling down the top section that hasn't been colored yet, hasn't been lifted yet, next to that back section that's just been lifted. There's still a big difference there, but it's not enough to be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a blonde. We still have to lift again. So now I have the top foils in and they're fully processing. I've gone from back to front, and then I've sat the foils down forward so that the heat from her forehead and face can lift those front foils faster. You can see they're already puffed up, which is why I don't like to fold in the sides of my top foils, because they get so hot they can puff and leak, and I'd rather them leak out the sides than to leak out the top of the foil and create bleed lines. Now you can see right here, this piece right here, this piece right in the front, that's where she starts applying her dye first. So you're gonna see as I'm applying the second round of lightener, just to the ends wherever there's box dye, the top front is the hardest and it's got the darkest color because that's where she always applies her box dye first. So it sits there longer, it's probably more saturated there, and it just makes it a lot harder in the future to lift that out, because if we had the darkest color at the back underneath, we could have easily like cut that out or like maybe disguised it with a darker color, but at the front, you want the blondest pieces. So my method here is to take lightener, so I'm using my Schwarzkopf and I'm mixing a 20 and a 30 volume. And I'm starting with the sides in the front right now because they have the darkest color. The back is a little bit on the lighter side because of course how she applies her color and where I started my service. So I am taking on wet hair with a K18 treatment in there, and I'm fully saturating this with some more lightener. And I do not expect this to get it to a level 9. This is not our expectation, but we're hoping to get it to like, hopefully a level 8. It's like at a solid 6 right now. So if we get 2 more levels of lift out of this while keeping the hair healthy, then we've had a big success. Because with box dyes, you're always gonna have these undertones no matter how you lift it, that they're just not gonna be those pure raw lift undertones. Look at how dark that front piece is. And I mean, honestly, can we also like talk about how like gorgeous my client's side profile is? She's like the prettiest person I've ever seen in my life. Anyways, these pieces need to be lifted more, and so using a 20 to 30 volume on hair that has no damage. The first lift was beautiful, absolutely no breakage. It didn't react badly with any of the box dye chemicals that were in there, and I honestly accredit a little bit of that to the K18 Pro Chelator Complex, but also to the fact that we did use a color remover and kind of pulled all that heavy stuff out of the hair first. So I think this is the safest way to lift out a box dye and lift as much as possible in one session, because you don't know what would have happened if I used, let's just say, a 30 volume and bleach 2 times in a row with no bonders, no protectors, and no metal detoxers, and maybe no color movers either. Like, this could have been an entirely different result if I didn't take those extra steps to protect her hair. So what I'm doing here is I'm gonna do that all over the whole head. You're not gonna see me do that, but that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm only covering the area where there's box dye because I don't wanna lift on that perfect lift that's already done up at the top. I don't wanna risk breakage there. And I'm just gonna let it sit till it's lifted as much as it can, and then we are going to do the sink thing and kind of rinse it out and go from there. And they say a watch pot never boils, so I did have to leave my client side for a few minutes to stop myself from rinsing out too early. So I'm taking a look, and she still needs a little bit more time. Also, toner free, smudge root free, those roots are looking really soft because that foiling method, yay for me. That's my star today. That's one of my stars is my foiling method. I'm really happy with it. Here is what the ends look like when I'm feeling like they're ready to come out. I don't want to potentially cause any damage to the beautiful blonde stuff. So the hair is telling me it's time. And it's telling me it's time before like the stretchy gumminess happened. So I think that it's the perfect time to do this. Because guess what we're doing at the sink is we're lifting those ends again, but we're lifting it with a permanent color that's going to lift and deposit a super ashy color right into those ends. So I am starting with the front pieces. What I'm mixing together is a Royal in Schwarzkopf, which is their permanent color line, and it's a 9-24, which is a ash beige. And I've mixed that with the silver absolutes, and the silver color has a very like green blue base. So I need those colors to fight that very orangey undertone in those black box dye ends while they progressively lift a tiny bit. Now it's not gonna lift a lot, but hopefully we can get something. So I've started with the worst and darkest area, and I'm moving towards the back where it's lifted better and more lighter, because I don't want to start with the area that needs the least correcting and then move towards the area with the most correcting. I want to do it where we're going to need the most time, because this one is a very sensitive color and I might just need to rinse it off at any point. I don't really know with this one how it's going to react. Toner is magic. You guys have all seen it on my channel before. Toner really, it does the thing. She did the thing. So she lifted and cooled as much as possible. And so I'm going to mix in my next toner, which is Schwarzkopf Vibrance 7-4, so 7 beige, 9-1, 9 ash, and 7-5-5 gold gold. And what that's going to do is it's going to balance her hair out. And as I've talked before, balancing is a mix of warm and cool toners so that any areas with inconsistent colors can kind of blend together a little easier. So I've left on that ashy formula and I've mixed in this warmer formula with it. Once that's processed and rinsed out, I'm doing her root shadow, which is Schwarzkopf Vibrance 7-1 and 7-4. I'm mixing together an ash and a beige to soften up that root. Her natural color is a level 6 and her ends and mids are like a level 8. So we're going for very low contrast here. She's going to have to grow out her hair for quite a while and progressively cut off those dead ends, those very dark orange ends with previous box dye in them, because we want to eventually have a soft blonde. But this is a very easy way to do that because we're going low contrast. And then I'm glazing over top of all that with another warm formula, and it's with a 7-5-5 and a 9-5-7, because sometimes when you lift to a perfect level 10 and then the ends are like a warm level 8, you need to add warmth back in. So I've got the root formula on, and in kind of those mids and ends, I'm applying more warmth, even though those ends are already warm, because it's going to only add warmth really to that middle area. The ends aren't really gonna take more toner, they're just not. Those mids are, and we need them to blend with everything else. And this is what it looks like while it's processing. It looks scary as hell, but the blend is really there, sis. Like, look at that blend. And girl, look how orange you look. I have to throw that in every video. Anyways, here's what we started with. Just showing you that before. The end result. Look at this. I personally think this is a really good result. I really like it. I'm really happy with it. So, you know, I mean, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. That's totally okay. You're welcome to have your opinions. We can see that the ends are a little on the warmer side and the top is a little on the cooler side, but this is all we can realistically get to in a single appointment. Anyways, I hope you guys liked it. Leave a comment below. Remember to like and subscribe to support the channel. And yeah, hope you guys have a great day and hope you learned something. Let me know your thoughts.